So as the video said repeatedly, my name is Hope Pavich, and I am the Executive Director of Care for Friends. We are based in Lincoln Park in Chicago, and we are an organization that provides fundamental resources to people who are experiencing street-based homelessness, food insecurity, as well as housing insecurity. So I am very, very pleased to meet with all of you today, and I'm honored that Care for Friends has been selected as the Episcopal Church Women's Outreach Partner of the Year, and that you've invited me to speak on this amazing topic of leadership and my journey as a leader, as being a woman in leadership. So to start from the beginning, I grew up in the south suburbs of Chicago, and I was the fourth of four children. That's me in the green right there with my sister and my two brothers. So I was the youngest of the four. And we were brought up in a very, very religious household. We were brought up Serbian Orthodox, and we attended at least 2 church services a week, sometimes more, depending if it was a Holy Week. Sometimes we went every day. And we also had morning and night prayers in an icon room that my father had created in our house. So when I say it was a religious household, it was very, very religious. But my family always reinforced 2 very strong lessons while we were growing up. And the first one was just to be a good person. And the second one was to try anything as long as it wasn't hurting anyone. So that idea was that we were instilled with the failure was just a part of any process, just as success is a part of any process. And that failure was not anything to be afraid of because it was just a part of life. And that mentality of, yeah, failure happens, just kind of work through it. And the mentality of try anything, it's not going to hurt, has really framed and did frame my outlook moving forward, both in my personal as well as in my professional experiences. So once I decided to leave the roost and go to college, I attended a very small liberal arts school right outside of Green Bay, Wisconsin, called St. Norbert College. And it was very safe, it was small, it was close-knit, and I continued to practice trying many, many things to see what stuck and what didn't. I was in plays, I hosted parties for international students, I tutored English, basically anything that someone said, hey, do you want to try this? I would just say, yeah. And some of the things I did well, and some of them I did not do well. I am not an actress, and so the plays I did not do well in, but it was all fun, and it was all, they were all really great experiences to have. But when I was a junior in college, I had the opportunity to study abroad, and I went to Salzburg, Austria. And this was really the first time in my life that I felt out of my comfort zone. And it was both exhilarating and absolutely, absolutely terrifying. And I just kind of wanted more of that experience. And I realized that post-graduation, I wanted to experience 180 degrees of anything that I had experienced in my life up until that point, which took me to my next stage. And I want to take a pause before we get to that next stage. I just want to take a pause and ask you all to think about your forks in the road, or times when you made a decision that had lasting impact on your own journey, in whether it be leadership or anything that you ended up doing. And if something pops up in your head, I believe there's a chat box that you can write in. So feel free to put in your moments of decision in the chat box, and then at the end we can refer back to those and discuss that a little bit more in the Q&A. But moving to China, the country of China, was definitely one of my first and major forks in the road. I'm from a family of lawyers. My siblings are all lawyers. All three of them are lawyers. They all married lawyers. My father's a lawyer. Everyone are lawyers. And so my path really seemed laid out for me. But I chose to go to China and teach English in a very small rural village instead of going to law school directly after college. That's me in the yellow shirt. I had a very distinct fashion back then as well. I just wasn't ready to continue on with three more years of school, and I really wanted to be in a culture that was 180 degrees from my own, but I still wanted to be living someplace where I felt safe as a woman. And so, after I listed all of the criteria that I was looking for, the only country that really ended up being last on the list and only on the list was China. And so that's where I went. And I absolutely loved the adventure. I loved the culture. I loved working with youth. I was teaching the equivalent of sophomores in high school and just really getting a lot out of that experience. But when I returned home, I realized from my time in China that I did not want to become a lawyer. So that had really solidified that part of the question. Okay, am I going to do that or not? The answer was no. But the first job that I was offered was to do sales in an organization or a company called Career Builder. And coming from such a life high of living in China, and at that point, it felt like I had been living my dream. And going from that life high to working at Career Builder, it became very apparent to me that making sales calls in a corporate environment was the opposite of the perfect fit for me. And that kind of became my second major fork in the road. It really solidified what industry I wanted to work in. And it was not corporate, it was absolutely in nonprofits. So over the next 4 to 5 years, I heeded the call of what I had felt compelled to do. I worked in my first Chicago nonprofit. So this is really when my experience working in Chicago nonprofits started. And that was with an organization called the Marriott Foundation, where I worked with Chicago public high school students who had cognitive delays and learning disabilities. And then I went to grad school in Vermont. It was the only grad school that I applied to because it was exactly what I was looking for. And so I really put all my eggs in one basket and crossed my fingers and I got in. And I did my off-campus practicum developing programs for survivors of human trafficking. So these were really my formative professional years, and they clarified my focus on what I wanted to do with the rest of my career. So when I returned home to Chicago, I desperately looked for work in anti-trafficking and again, working with survivors of trafficking, but I couldn't find any work. And so I accepted a position in cultural exchange. And I had planned to be there for 2 years, and I ended up there for more than 7. It was a fun time. It was very stressful because of the work, but it really was a rut. I enjoyed the work. I loved sending youth abroad, and I really loved watching them come home with enhanced confidence and language skills. And the organization kept giving me reasons to stay, from travel and promotions and opportunities to develop my own leadership skills. But the entire time I was there, I just wasn't fulfilled. Like there was a part of me that just felt like didn't feel right. Something just felt off. And so it honestly wasn't until I lost out on a promotion that I didn't even want in the first place. I didn't even want that role, and I lost out on it. And so I decided, okay, I need to seriously look for another job and one that makes more sense for me. And that's when I found Care for Friends, which is just something I feel is really my perfect fit. And I love the mix of programming that we do and outreach and development and leadership, and my favorite piece of it, which is partnership. And although I'm the executive director, it really is a community effort. For those of you who don't know, Care for Friends started actually in 1968 as a mission of Church of Our Savior in Lincoln Park. And it just continued to grow to a point where in 2012, it outgrew the operational capabilities of what the church was able to sustain. And so that's when it became its own 501c3 independent organization. And we provide clothing and toiletries and healthcare and food programs to people who are experiencing homelessness. So although we are no longer technically a part of the church, we still operate within the space. The church is still our strongest partner. We work with them on a daily basis, and many of our volunteers, especially our core volunteers, are parishioners of Church of Our Savior. So right now, our newest effort is a grocery delivery service that we launched in January. And it's specifically for youth experiencing homelessness and their families. And it is basically you just took the structure of what Instacart is, if any of you are familiar with Instacart, and I applied it towards the program and what we could operate. And so we receive intake forms of youth from their teachers, their counselors, people who know them best, and we understand what their dietary restrictions are, any kind of dietary needs, allergies, things like that. And then once a month, we create food boxes that have a plethora of food for them. It's produce, fresh produce, grains, meats, really anything that they can use, and they don't have to go to the grocery store for it, because it's 35 pounds of food per person, and we deliver it directly to wherever they're staying. So we receive the address of where they want it delivered, because many of them they're experiencing homelessness, they move around a lot. And so right before we end up going to deliver, we take the information from the counselor and find out where they are, and we're able to deliver it directly to where they're staying. And so in that way, they don't have the barrier of transportation, because many of these students may have access to food pantries, but they don't have a way to get their food from point A to point B because they don't have a vehicle. So instead of going to the food pantry and getting healthier foods, they end up going to 7-Eleven or the corner store anyway. So this program has grown exponentially already. We started it in January, and we have already offered groceries to 70 families. And by the end of the year, we're on track to hit 250 and probably more. And so this is why working at Care for Friends is just absolutely a joy, and leading this organization really has been joyful, is because of the community effort and the community that we work with, that we provide services to. I don't ever feel like I'm working in a silo. It's never a solo effort. It's with all of our partners and volunteers and staff. And it's just really incredible because we're able to see a need and understand what that need is. And we do everything in our power to be able to meet that need. So it's been wonderful to work for such a great organization, and it's been honestly humbling to lead it. But because of what we do, I'm just impassioned every day to continue doing it. And there are days that are harder than others. I'm not going to lie. It's been a very emotionally trying year. But at the end of the day, the work that we see happening is just powerful. And just in general, the early foundation of clarity of my purpose and the Pavich motto of just trying anything has really helped me greatly in leadership positions, and specifically in this position, because, the trying anything really is a great example. The grocery program, we thought, okay, there's a need. Obviously, students need this. Let's see what we can do. So I see all the great chats in there, so we can come back to that at the end. And Beth, will you be able to read this quote?
Yes, I can. And the quote is from Marianne Williamson. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same.
So thank you, Beth. I really like this quote. A friend of mine had shared it with me years ago, and it's just always stuck with me. And so when Beth asked me to present today and to speak with all of you, I knew that I wanted to include this quote because it's just so relevant to today's meeting and to today's topic. And so I just wanted to encourage all of us to embrace the moments when we share in the shine of others.